Hi, welcome, brethren, to another edition of my midweek pastor's comments. This week we're going to be looking at Psalm 41, and the theme of Psalm 41 is God's grace. David says in verse 4, "O Lord, be gracious to me." And in verse 10 he says, "But you, O Lord, be gracious to me and raise me up." He said David is asking for God's grace. He's in a time of trouble, in a time of sickness. And he's asking for God's help, God's mercy in the midst of that suffering. Now, in the midst of that suffering, David has experienced people coming to him and showing him a lack of mercy and a lack of compassion. And so he begins this psalm in Psalm 41, and he says, "How blessed is he who considers the helpless." And this is an Old Testament parallel to the Beatitude in Matthew. "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." For as believers, we should be the first to show others mercy when they have times of suffering and sickness and trial, because we have received mercy from God. We've experienced His mercy in our own lives, and we should be the first ones to show it towards others. And David actually says, like those who consider the helpless. You want to consider and you be thoughtful about ways that you can help those in need. Not only should you be merciful, but you want to pray for God's grace. Continually pray for God's help in the midst of trials. There's nothing wrong with asking God for mercy and grace. David actually says in verse 12 that you uphold me in integrity, because part of this circumstance for David is discipline for sin. God has sent sickness in his life, and David responds in integrity. He realizes he's sinned against God, and he asks God for forgiveness. He repents. Doesn't mean the consequences go away immediately, but God has shown him grace, and God has shown him mercy and favor, because ultimately that's what grace is. It's undeserved favor. And God shows us grace, and we should actually pray for more grace, pray for more mercy. David also says that he's experienced pain and heartache. As I mentioned earlier, that in the midst of his sickness, even his dear friend, in verse 9, he says, "Even my close friend whom I trusted, he ate my bread, and he has lifted up his heel against me." The idea is one of treachery and deception. People came in to see David, and in their hearts they were really praying for his downfall. Brethren, I'm sure many of you experienced times of suffering and trials where people really weren't compassionate with you. They really weren't kind towards you. Rather than responding in bitterness in your heart, you should remember those times, and when you see others, you want to treat others as if you were treated that way. You want to be kind to others and show compassion and show mercy to others. And that's David's point here, is we need to show grace because we receive it from the Lord. God bless.